Hi, I'm here with Jose from Elite Credit Group. He was gonna answer some questions.
Yes, of course. Definitely here to help you guys out.
So what is the ideal number of credit cards to carry?
That's a great question. A lot of people typically think the more cards, the better chances I have of getting a higher credit score, and sometimes it's not as simple as that. Typically what we tell our clients is the ideal number of credit cards is the amount that you can actually handle yourself. So we never want to bite off more than we can chew, but we also want to make sure that we flex our credit, because at the end of the day, your credit's like a muscle and it needs to be trained as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what's the best credit card usage percentage?
That's another really good question. I get asked that quite often, actually. A lot of people typically want to go with the myth that you need to be under 30%. However, most lenders typically like to see under 10% utilization. So what that means is if you have a $1,500 credit card, you want to keep it under $150 revolving every month or under.
So I'm so glad you said that, because I always tell people 10% and they look at me like, what?
No, 30% is great. 30% is great,
No,
but 10% is more ideal. Correct.
Yes.
It shows more financial responsibility.
Yeah. I speak sometimes to young people at schools, and I tell them 10%, and they're like, what?
Yeah.
And then, so anyway, I'm glad you said that, because that is what I tend to recommend.
Of
It's
course.
just the less usage, the better.
Exactly.
All right. So how can someone improve their credit score without going into debt?
One of the easiest ways I always tell people to improve their credit scores without going into debt, without swiping and buying that new flat screen or that new video game system or just running it up at the bar, is pay your current bills with it. A lot of people don't realize is that you can pay stuff like your cell phone bill and other bills that you're currently paying with your credit card, and then you make the payment with your debit card, because you're already going to spend that money either way. Might as well use that to actually boosting your FICO versus harming it.
Yeah. So when you're using, when you know you're gonna pay something, right?
Correct, such as your T-Mobile bill.
Not to get a new
Don't buy a brand new phone every month.
Or a new Netflix account, or a new, because I'm gonna use my credit card now, meaning that you already have a Netflix account that you pay every month.
Exactly.
That you're responsible paying it every month, and that you put it on your credit card, because it'll show that you're using the credit card.
Exactly. So it shows active history, which is
Yes.
very beneficial. I actually myself, I pay my cell phone bill, I pay my daughter's Disney Plus account, and I pay for my gas already with my credit card. And if you're in that financial standpoint where you have a good credit card that's going to give you bonus points, you're actually saving more money in the long run. So you pay it and you swipe your credit card for that, and then you pay it off immediately, and then you get the bonus points on it without having to pay interest.
Yeah, that's what I do. I get 2% back, and then I have,
I love it.
I make some money. But you have to pay it on time.
Exactly.
Because then those cards actually cost you more if you don't pay it on time, because they have a higher APR and different things.
Which goes into question number one, which is, make sure you have, an ideal amount of credit cards, but make sure you have the good credit cards that definitely don't have high APRs.
Yes. And then also with what we were saying is make sure that you're using under 10% of your credit limit, though.
Exactly.
So if don't put your Netflix and everything count and you only have $500 credit limit.
Exactly.
And you're spending $500 on all your things, then still keep in mind to keep it under 10%, right?
Exactly.
All right. So what's the best method to pay back your debts?
So there's what we like to call two different types of people that when they deal with credit cards. One person is that person who swipes up their credit card and they leave a balance. And then what ends up happening is the bank is going to see that balance, because there's two dates that's always important. There's your statement date and your posting date. Your statement date is your due date, typically. Your posting date is the day that they report that balance to the credit bureaus and credit agencies. I always recommend pay off your credit cards before the posting date, so therefore it reflects a zero balance, which skyrockets your FICO versus reflecting. On top of that, what typically ends up happening is after they post it, that's when they're going to hit you with the interest on it. So the best method to pay back your debt is to pay it off beforehand. If not, you will inquire interest. So you can use your credit card and not pay any interest at all, as long as you're paying it before it posts onto your account. So I always recommend try to pay early, and never, like I said, never bite off more than you can chew. That's why I always recommend 10%. So it definitely helps.
Do you recommend paying off early part of it or the full amount?
I always recommend if you don't want to pay interest. Now there's going to be certain credit cards that don't have an interest. They're 0% interest for the first 16, 18 months, and those are great. But if you have a credit card that has, on average, which is your American standard, 19 to 22% interest rates, which is pretty high, especially compared to mortgage rates, that if they have a high interest rate like that, pay it off. If not, you're just giving money to someone else when you could put that money towards savings.
Yeah.
So
this is for people that already have debt.
Correct.
If you don't have debt.
If you don't have debt,
don't leave a balance.
Try not to leave a balance. I would always recommend, just if you're using it for your typical bills, pay off your bill with your credit card, and then the next week you pay off the credit card. So I personally love Chase. I'm a big fan for Chase, me personally. Their credit cards are amazing, same as Capital One. And what I do is I use them for like I said, I use them for your everyday purchases, and then a week later I pay it off before even the statement date or due date. And next thing you know, it's a zero balance, but you're getting all the bonus points on everything, which is always beneficial.
All right. And then what's some people ask, why is my credit score not improving?
That's a good question. A lot of times there's multiple major factors into determining what your credit score is. And one of the biggest factors, aside from utilization and payment history, is your average age of history. Now, if you have someone who's canceling out their old credit cards, but they're opening a brand new credit card every single 6 months to a year, your average age of history is getting lowered and lowered, which isn't helping their credit card, especially if they're closing out that old account that has multiple years of payment history. You're essentially getting rid of the old good history, and you're just starting fresh every single year. So sometimes closing out an account is actually more harmful and detrimental to your credit than good.
Yeah. So important to keep your old credit cards and, I don't buy a $1 chocolate bar or whatever.
Absolutely.
Just keep it active.
Yes.
And the newer ones, I had a lender tell me that he kept getting credit cards and it improved his credit, and I was like, oh my goodness.
It's a very, like I said, it's like a muscle.
Yeah.
Your FICO is essentially a muscle, and if you don't utilize it, if you don't swipe your card, you lose your muscle, you lose your credit. If you overflex it too much, you're going to tear your muscle. In other words, you go over your limits, and that's when it starts harming your credit as well. So it's always good to push your credit, but make sure you're staying within range. But try your best to think long term. And I always tell clients, especially when those who need credit repair, is what's your goal? If your goal is to buy a house, you need to sit down with a good lender and a good realtor as well, who's going to go in depth on everything you need.
Yes.
We need to go over a mortgage plan. Hey, well, if you're planning on getting into a mortgage, you want to make sure you go through these steps right now. So by the time you sit down and write up that offer, there's no hiccups along the way.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for watching. If you have any questions on credit, we're here to help. Message me. And if you need any real estate help, feel free to reach out as well.
Feel free to definitely reach out.
It's the new year, so it's a good time to start looking at, how can I fix my credit so that you could purchase. Absolutely, especially for those whose New Year's resolutions is either to refinance or even get into a new home as well. You want to get your credit fixed, or make sure it's at that adequate point right before you sit down with the lender as well, just so you can make sure it's a speedy and easy process. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. Bye-bye. Take care, guys.